Senator from Oklahoma.
Mr. President, it's my understanding that I am scheduled for 20 minutes. I ask unanimous consent that I be recognized for such time as I shall consume.
Without objection.
And I ask unanimous consent that following my remarks that, the junior senator from Oklahoma, Senator Langford, be recognized.
Without objection.
Mr. President, right now, probably the most significant thing that we'll be facing with as soon as we get through with the education bill that Senator Lamar Alexander has done such a great job on is going to be the transportation reauthorization bill. And I found out that the House just passed a few minutes ago a 5-month extension to the highway reauthorization bill. And I would suggest that people may think there's some type of an adversarial relationship between our bill in the Senate and the House bill. There isn't. We're working together. We both want to accomplish a long-term bill, and I anticipate that we will actually have passed in the next few days a long-term, maybe a 6-year highway reauthorization bill, at which time we'll go to conference with the House, and it'll be business as usual. So I want to make sure to put, in case there's a fire looming out there, that we put it out early. Passing the long-term transportation bill has been my top priority since I returned as chairman of the Environment and Public Works Committee. Now, ironically, the ranking member of that committee, Senator Boxer from California, feels just as strongly that's her top priority also. So I consider this to be the second most significant bill of the year, the first one being, of course, to the defense reauthorization, which we have already addressed here. But we felt strongly enough about this being a top priority that we had our first full committee hearing on the need to reauthorize what we call at that time MAP 21. And we had as a witness Anthony Fox, the Secretary of Transportation, and as well as a lot of government leaders. So they shared the importance of an ongoing federal and state partnership in building and maintaining a modern surface infrastructure system. Now, since that hearing, my committee has put forward a bold bipartisan solution called the DRIVE Act, that will put our nation on a path to having a world-class transportation system. I've often said that there's no such thing as a Republican or a Democrat road, or a Republican or a Democrat bridge. This is something that is bipartisan. And by the way, I have to say that when this bill, the DRIVE Act, passed, my committee, it passed unanimously. Every Democrat, every Republican voted for the bill. The Transcontinental Railroad was, I'm proud to say that Republicans have historically been leading the way in transportation, going all the way back to the Lincoln days when he passed the Transcontinental Railroad. The Panama Canal was done by Teddy Roosevelt. And of course, the interstate highway system is one that was done by Eisenhower. And Eisenhower said that the transportation system is a dynamic element in the very name we bear, United States. Without it, we'd be merely an alliance of separate parts. But what he also said, let's remember that Eisenhower was a president. He was a star. He was one that was concerned, and he started the first highway bill as addressing the problems of defense. The fact that you can't, if you don't have a highway system within the United States, you can't adequately supply the necessary means to fight and win wars. So that was the very first motivation of it. In laying out the full interstate system, Eisenhower envisioned it to be the physical backbone of the economy, fueling the growth of our GDP, our cities, and the competitiveness of our exports. Now, this vision and certainty maximize the economic and mobility benefits of the system. Businesses and individuals knew that they could locate somewhere, if they could locate somewhere on a future interstate system, they'd be connected not just with the nation, but with the world. And I'm afraid that this legacy system, which was built with a 50-year design life, is now more than 50 years old. So we're out of warranty now, Mr. President, and we need to address it. And that's the sense of urgency that we have. We are in serious danger of eroding a half century of investments without proper maintenance, modernization, and reconstruction. And we're on borrowed time with a system that is in full need of restoration. Our national interstate system currently has a maintenance backlog of $185 billion. Now, that national interstate system is actually 47,000 miles in length, and is just to bring back the system to the original 1956 designs, it would be that expensive. Now, maintaining Eisenhower's vision of economic opportunity and strength in defense requires a continued partnership between the federal government and the states, which is the hallmark of the DRIVE Act. Yet, due to 33 short-term patches since 2005, the highway construction now consists of maintenance, kind of a patchwork. This is what happened, Mr. President. We had a bill, a transportation reauthorization bill. Is a 5-year bill. This is 2005. I'm very familiar with it. I was the author of the bill at that time. In 2005, we passed this long-term bill. Now, since that time, we've been unable to pass a long-term reauthorization bill. So we've been operating on extensions, short-term extensions. And it's really interesting, I say to the chair, that we are now looking at something that has both a liberal and a conservative perspective. The conservative position is a long-term bill, because the only alternative is short-term extensions. Short-term extensions, according to, I don't think anyone has ever challenged this, it costs about 30% more, because you can't get big projects in it, which we'll talk about in a minute. So we are now to the point where we're going to be able to do something with a long-term bill. Now, passing a long-term bill is crucial in many aspects of day-to-day life in America. More than 250 million vehicles and 18 billion tons valued at 17 trillion in goods traverse across the country every year. Yet every day, 2,000 miles of our highways slow below the posted speed limits because of the stop-and-go conditions of over-congestion. The National Highway System, this is kind of interesting. Not many people are aware of this. Our whole National Highway System is only 5.5% of the nation's total roads, but it carries 55% of all vehicles traffic and 97% of the truck-borne freight. So 5.5% of the nation's roads account for the transportation of 97% of the freight across this country. And this type of congestion has a huge negative impact on our businesses and throughout America. Congress just passed a 2-month extension, and we now have the responsibility to pass a long-term solution. As I mentioned, they did pass something that over in the House that we are in agreement. That'll get them to conference with us, and I think most of them are going to be, from the ones I've talked to over there, are going to be very excited about the fact that we're going to have a funding for a 6-year bill. The Highway Trust Fund currently needs $15 billion a year to maintain current spending. What we're saying there is, if you take the proceeds of the gas tax that's out there, in order to do what we are currently doing, it takes an additional $15 billion each year just to do that. But we need to do more than just maintain the system. We need to improve it for the future of America's growing economy. Unfortunately, my committee just passed that bill unanimously. As I said, we call it the DRIVE Act. Now, let me tell you what the DRIVE Act would do. It'll put America back on the map as the best place to do business. The DRIVE Act has several key components that position America's transportation system to support our growing economy. First of all, it prioritizes funding for core transportation formula programs to provide states and local government with strong federal partners. In other words, the states have the needs, they articulate those needs to the federal government. The federal government goes in and makes sure that that can be a reality. Let's keep in mind, you have some states, I just suggest Wyoming, for example, It would take 3 times as much money actually to take care of the roads in Wyoming than could be produced by the sparse population of that state. So that's one of the major reasons, initial reasons for the program. And secondly, it prioritizes the interstate system, the national highway system, and the bridges at risk system. Well, as I said, the interstate system is 47,000 miles, but the national highway system is 220,000 miles, of which that does encompass the 47 miles of the interstate system. The third thing, it creates a new multi-billion-dollar per year freight program to help states deliver projects that promote the safe, efficient, and reliable transportation of consumer goods and products across the United States. And the fourth thing is that, and this is something that a lot of people are not aware of, a lot of people think that we in Washington have this infinite wisdom that we know what is best for the states. We don't believe that. We believe that the states should set their own priorities. In my state of Oklahoma, I don't even get involved in what projects are going to be there, but we have a state system where the state does evaluate, and certainly they know more about our needs in Oklahoma than the federal government does. Don't you agree? That's right. Well, so that's where we are on that, and we let the states determine what projects we're going to be doing. The fifth thing is it provides a greater efficiency in the project delivery process through reforms that put DOT in the driver's seat during the NEPA process by requiring other agents to bring in their issues. Here's what happens. We have a lot of good rules in the NEPA program, the environmental programs, but there are some things where we feel that that should not slow down the construction of roads and highways and bridges, both new bridges and repairs. Now, to do that, we have to write that into the law. So it streamlines the system. Now, if you have nothing but short-term extensions, that doesn't happen. They don't get streamlined. And let me compliment my partner in this, which is the ranking member, Senator Boxer from California. It's interesting. I'm among the most conservative members of the United States Senate. She is a very proud liberal, and yet we both agree on what our priorities should be, and that makes this process more important. She has been willing to do things she didn't really want to do, because it does short-circuit some of the NEPA requirements. And as a general rule, she would not want to do that. But this has been a give and take, and that's why we have a bill that passed our committee by unanimously. The sixth or seventh thing is eliminating the duplicative reviews and expanding categorical exclusions. I'll give you an example of that. We have bridge projects that we give them special considerations with new exemptions from Section 4F, the historic property reviews. Now, to be a historic property, it has to be over 50 years old, and for them to continue to be able to do it, it takes these exemptions from what other historic things have to go through, because we are in the business of building bridges. The second thing, we have the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. It's on the books now, and it allows us to go ahead and start working on projects, even though swallows nest. I know it sounds kind of insignificant, but it's not, because the swallows go in there, and while they're not protected, they're not enlisted as an endangered species, they still are protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And they have actually caused us to have to stop construction on many of the deficient bridges around the country. Now, this is just kind of a brief overview of the bill. As the DRIVE Act progresses on the floor, I intend to address the significance of each program in a lot more detail. The most important point I must address today about the DRIVE Act is that our bill sets up funding levels for the next 6 years. This is at the very best what the federal government should provide, so that states, local officials, and construction industry can gear up for a large projects. And we're talking to put up some of the large projects, the $500 million to $2 billion project. These are things you can't do with extensions, but you can do with a bill such as the bill that we have successfully passed. we have thousands of projects around the nation that are currently at jeopardy, and construction will come to a halt unless this legislation becomes a reality. Do you have the Brent? All right, this is the Brent Spence Bridge. This goes from Kentucky to Ohio. Right now, that is in dire need, and you can see you can actually visibly see the problems with this antiquated bridge. And it's now, chunks are dropping off into the river below, and it's become very dangerous. We saw not long ago in another adjoining state what can happen if a bridge goes out. Here in D.C., we have the Memorial Bridge. It's literally crumbling. You can go down right now, and you can see the pieces of the bridge dropping into the Potomac River. And it was built in 1932. It's only received a patchwork ever since that time, and it's estimated that nearly $250 million will be required to keep the bridge operational. That's not a new bridge. That's to make that into an operational bridge. You recognize this. You drive by it, many of you every day, but you don't see. You have to get down there in a boat, and you can see concrete dropping into the Potomac. We have many more like it. What others do we have here? Oh yeah, the Mobile River. This is in Alabama. Now this is what it will look like later. That is not a current picture. This is what it is right now. These are the types of projects that we can do now that which we could not do with just extensions as we have been doing since 2009. I believe more than just a small part of the economic success enjoyed by the United States over the past 50 years has been the interstate system, started by President Eisenhower. But today we literally sit in a situation where we're going to have to do something to carry this forward. And that's why Senator Boxer and I are bringing the DRIVE Act to the Senate floor, and it will ensure the states have the tools and the certainty to make the necessary new investments to rebuild Eisenhower's vision, fight growing congestion, and maintain the mobility of goods and services across our country. So we're going to have this up. I think this will be on the floor right probably the next thing after we finish with the education bill. And again, no one can argue that this is the second most significant bill that we have to be addressed, that we address each year, and we haven't addressed this one in the right way since 2005. So it's very significant. We're looking forward to it. Do we have any more charts down there? That's it. So anyway, Mr. President, we are going to be coming forth with this, and I'm going to be coming to the floor and talking about a lot more detail of what we have. We've got to get the roads and the bridges taken care of, and we intend to do it. And the product to do that is the DRIVE Act. Thank you. I'll yield the floor.